Good morning from Australia, Emily. Welcome to the Jessica Pinelli podcast.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to dive into this.
I'm very, very excited. I'm actually on your Instagram at the moment, and I want to start probably a different way you're not expecting. I see that,
Okay.
yes, you've moved into marketing, but you were a doula before. How did you make that
Yeah.
switch? That is so interesting to me.
Yeah. So it's so funny because when I was a doula, and actually I still serve,
Mm,
and I secretly enjoyed the like marketing and like making my website and like the copywriting for that more like probably than other doulas did. And so it's just always something I've been passionate about, like using words and concepts to move people into transformation is how I view marketing. Even when I was a little girl, I used to make like little brochures for like pretend dance classes and stuff. So it's just always been something that's like there that I'm naturally good at and enjoy. So I was working nights as a postpartum doula, and I'm also a single mom. And so that combination just got really hard on my body, and I needed to take a step back. And I started a virtual assistant business for birth professionals and quickly learned that marketing is where I needed to niche my services. And then I ended up here. So that's how that happened.
that's incredible. I love that when you were making your website and doing all of that, you fell in love with the process even more. Where did you really decide to kind of put a lot more energy into building a business of helping coaches with their marketing?
Yeah. So, well, I guess like transitioning into marketing specifically, it just was, well, I guess I could say coincidence or fate or whatever. Most of the jobs I was getting as a freelance VA were marketing based. So, like social media, blog writing, email marketing, websites. Um, and so I just over time, had to educate myself more on like strategy and like marketing concepts and things like that because I care about doing a good job at what I do. And I was like, I want to make sure that I understand and do a good job. And so I kind of built up my skill set there. And then I wanted to expand my services of like who I was serving a little bit more. And so then I started helping coaches as well, not instead of just birth professionals. And I met so many amazing people that way. And ultimately, I just love working and connecting with world changers at the end of the day, like people who have a really strong mission and a really big heart and want to change the world. Those are my people.
That's beautiful. I love that. World changes. Where did you come up
Yeah.
with that concept and why do you resonate with that? I really love that.
I came up with it initially. I made a post for my VA account. If you scroll like all the way down on my Instagram, you can see all the different transitions I've gone through in business over the past year. And I made one where I was attempting to make a post for my birth professional clients that was like speaking to the impact that they have on the world and create some relationship with them through my content. And I wrote birth workers are world changers. And that phrase just like stuck with me. And I think it resonates with me because it's what I want to do too. And I am a very deep person. I'm not a super like surface level kind of gal. And so I don't feel as fulfilled working with, I guess, people who don't have like a really deep mission behind what they do.
I feel that I can really see that going from being a doula and then trying to translate because that's so impactful on the world. Um,
Yeah.
and then trying to translate that impact into what you currently do and with coaches. And something that I want to go back to that you said is you love to do a really good job and you love to do things with your heart. That's what I'm really getting from you. I can quite literally hear the
Yeah.
passion as you're speaking. And what does that
Aw.
look like? And what have you seen in, I guess, the industry, maybe over the past year, where there may be a disconnect, where there is a lot of coaches, whether it's in marketing or business, mindset, whatever it may be, but there's a disconnect with actually wanting to do a good job? Because I was having this conversation yesterday. I feel a lot is driven by let's just make lots of money. Is money a part of it? Absolutely, it's a
Mm,
part of it. I'm never ever going to deny that. But I'm with you. I love that's why I resonated with the world changes. It's like, where is the impact? So, what have you seen and
mm.
what does it mean for you to do a good job and to help the coaches you work with?
Yeah, that is such a good question because there is like so much that I see in the marketing space that is old and like needs to go away. And it's like older marketing concepts that are really manipulative and they're not really going to fit into a better version of the world. And those are like the tactics that are like you feel like when you're, I would just say like gauge how you feel when you're interacting with a post because you can read a post that's like you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, and here's what you need to do instead, and it's my offer, you know. And
Mm,
so basically what marketing is doing is it's taking your feelings and your emotions and it's like causing them to peak in a certain way and then um what's the word that I'm looking for? Leveraging that
mm,
to, you know, gain business and to get a sale. And that's how marketing typically works. And so there's a certain level of like responsibility that has to come with that because you're dealing with people's emotions. And I think, you know, if you were in person um, doing that, you'd want to be mindful of how you're making someone feel. And so I see a lot on the online space right now of people, I just feel like not doing that, you know, and it doesn't feel good to consume that kind of content. And I know it doesn't feel good to make it. Um, but it's like, I think some people think that that's the only way to get where they want to get in their business or to create content. But yeah, so I would say that that's like one of the bigger things I'm
mm,
seeing right now that's kind of bothering me is just the marketing that feels like it's talking down to you. Doesn't make you
mm.
feel so great or like empowered, you know?
Yeah, I call that mean girl marketing. I feel in the past year and a half, there's been a lot of that, a lot of
Mhm.
shaming, a lot of judging. And I feel we're starting to see a transition from people like you who are really speaking out about it because I agree. I think there's been a lot of mean girl marketing to leverage sales, to leverage people in an emotional way to get them to buy. And so
Mhm.
when you see this, what are the types of things if people are listening right now, consumers, and they're watching their favorite coaches and they're trying to decide whether they want to purchase a program or a course or get some support, but they're unsure about, is this what I really need? Am I being shamed to this? Do I feel bad about this? What are the things to look out for? What would you say when you said, you know, read it and consume it and see how you feel? What really is that feeling of it's not congruent with actually making an impact with someone?
Oh, that's a great question too. I would say, the biggest word that's coming to mind with that is the word empowerment. Like, do you feel empowered in buying this, or do you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to buy this or else XYZ isn't going to
Mm,
happen? Because that's probably not true. There's like so many ways for whatever circumstance you're seeking. There's like a million ways for that to happen. We live in a magical world, you know, there's so many different ways that something can happen. And so if this person is making you feel like, if you're feeling like a panicky kind of feeling or like a
mm,
I have to do this or else something bad is going to happen to me, then you're probably not like buying or responding to their marketing from an empowered place versus feeling like, wow, this is something that I really want for myself. This is something that I feel like aligns with my values and aligns with my vision. And it's calling me into like a higher version of myself. That's like two very different experiences. So it's just, you know, unfortunately, we have to be like really self aware when we're scrolling these days because it's easy to get on Instagram and then just be told by a million coaches what you're doing wrong with your life and
mm.
how you need to do better. And then you
Yeah.
wonder why you're like drained after you're scrolling, like, because you're that's so much information to take in and like, and then you lose your own voice and your own vision. So I think it can go downhill quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually been having a lot of conversations with people who are have unfollowed basically everyone, and I'm following like
Mm,
one person, and they're saying that
yeah.
feels very, very cleansing. I've seen a few people on Threads actually recently in the past week who have culled basically their entire following to get rid of all the people that are like stagnant energy and the people that aren't their
Yep.
ideal niche. What do you think about that? And anyone who's listening that's like, I have resistance with culling my numbers from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective.
Yeah. I made a post kind of similar to that today, talking about like a boundary that I set with myself, which was basically that, like, when I was getting really clear on my messaging and really trying to pick up my marketing in the beginning, I had a coach who told me this exact same thing. And she was like, you just need to turn it off, like stop getting on there, stop looking for advice on there, because it can be a great place to learn. When I say it, I mean like Instagram.
Mm.
That's my main place that I hang out. But Threads now too, like it can be an awesome place to learn. But I think ultimately, if that starts like impacting your ability to create and you're consuming more than you're creating, then there's like a bit of an imbalance. And yeah, just I mean, I don't know how I feel about like unfollowing like everybody. I think that kind of gives me the vibe of someone doing like a cleanse or something, and they're like, I'm just like not gonna eat for like 7 days. And I'm like, whoa, like maybe throw some snacks in, like I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know about unfollowing like everybody, but I think there's 100% a benefit to going through, I don't know how spiritual and hippie you get on here, but I think
As
energetically too.
spiritual as you want. Let's go
Great.
spiritual and hippie. I
Let's
love
go
it.
there.
Let's talk about the energetic sides of,
Yeah.
I guess, social media as a whole. What are your perspective when it comes
Yeah.
to consuming? Because I do agree. I feel even more
Ooh.
so this how cute. Even more so, there is so much overconsumption. And I think that people are, especially coaches, I feel like coaches are really losing their voice of who they are when it comes to social media. And they are, when it comes to losing their voice, like I see so many, I've seen a few reels actually. I don't really consume a lot of reels. I more so do consume TikTok, but it's very, very filtered. But one thing I will say is I see a lot of reels saying, when you're scrolling on your news feed and you are looking for inspiration. And I think that this is what a lot of the coaches and the industry has come for, is looking for inspiration from the people that they are following, from coaches they know of, from the things they are consuming. And there's nothing wrong with the inspiration part. There's nothing wrong with having to, yeah, broaden your horizons. But what do you really think about this overconsumption when it comes to looking for inspiration, comes to our own energy, comes to our voice seemingly being drowned out by what's happening on social media?
So I think that that is useful, and there's something to be said for that. And I know like some of my friends who are like human design nerds like me, I think certain types like can benefit from that more than others. But definitely, if that's like a way that you have found consistently helps you, then I think lean into that and do that. But I think that there's usually like a line that ends up being crossed where it becomes unhelpful. And I think the experience of that is like when you're consuming the content, if you start to compare it to your own or have thoughts of like, oh, I should have thought of that, or something like comparison, like imposter syndrome, then I think those are signs that it's probably starting to be less helpful.
Mm,
And I think there's lots of ways to get inspiration. If you have any notes about your ideal client or testimonials or like some kind of strategy laid out that says what your goals are and what you're trying to do in your business, then taking a look at that as well for some inspiration can, I think, like be a little bit more aligned than like scrolling.
for the listeners that are sick and tired of Instagram. I'm sure that you've seen a lot on threads as well, because that's how we connected. There's a lot of complaints and unhappiness when it comes to Instagram as a business and the engagement and all of that. So if someone is listening right now and they have an online business, whatever it may be, and they're feeling really, really frustrated, they feel that they've lost their voice, they feel like it's not fun anymore. I know you just started to touch on it, but I'd really love to hear, where do you suggest they start when it comes to their marketing, finding their voice, having fun with social media? I mean, it is called social media after all. And I think that sometimes we forget this, even admittedly, sometimes I forget it. It's meant to be a social place,
Yeah.
it's meant to be a fun place. But then I think about, the amazing moments we connected over threads. You're all the way in the States right now. And I think that's such a beautiful thing about social media. But it's almost like we've lost that beautiful aspect of it majority of the time.
Mhm. Yes, I think so too. So this is, I think, a shift in perspective of my business exists, or my Instagram exists for my business, to my Instagram exists for my mission and my impact.
Mm.
And when your Instagram exists for your business, it can feel really draining because it's not really coming from a place that's like deep inside you. And I posted a thread a few weeks ago, um, about how manifestation for me is like a huge part of my ability to show up consistently on Instagram, because it
Mm.
is work. There's a reason why people pay someone else to do it. It's time consuming. And it's a lot of energy to put out, and you can't just sustain that without having some level of like heart behind it. So if you are starting to feel that like social media burnout, um, I would say to bring more of you into your content. I think people really downplay like how much your audience and your community wants to see you and your stories. And if you're really looking for like a specific starting point, I would start by sharing more of your story of like how you became passionate about like what you share, and how you got into what you do, and what have been your trials along the way, and what's something interesting that happened to you last week. Like, people want to know. um, we don't want the cookie cutter stuff anymore. We want, how is this applying to real, true life? So yeah, make yourself the main character of your Instagram. Don't be afraid to do that. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, I love that. And that is one of the reasons why I started with the question I did. I was like, I'd already stalked your Instagram previous, but the one thing that caught me, I was like, oh, she used to be a doula. That's so interesting. And I think that is such a, when you were speaking, I was like, yes, this is a great reminder for everyone, is like, what's the impact you're sharing? What's the mission that you really
Mhm.
want to share with the world? And I think over the past couple of years, it's really been lost, because yes, it's easier than ever to make money online and to create a business online. And I completely appreciate that. And working online is one of the reasons why I have the lifestyle I do. But I also think
Right.
we have almost forgotten that, yes, it's about an impact and a mission, and what do I really want to share, and who do I really want to be known for. And something I want to loop back to, because I did see this thread that you posted about using manifestation in your business. I want you to go into that. Let's speak about that. What does that mean for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. So for me, I'm trying to like think back to like the headspace or like the space I wrote that from. Um, and I would say that like my manifestations, as far as like the specifics of what I'm manifesting, have shifted a little bit. So it's kind of hard to say exactly like what that looks like, because I think it's changing right now for me. Um, but I think generally it's just staying connected to my mission behind my Instagram, and like taking the time and the intention to connect to that and keep it in mind, because like I was saying, it's like a lot of work on top of owning a business and being a mom, and like I homeschool my son, which is insane. And
Oh, wow, that's
I have all these
incredible.
different
Running a
yeah,
business,
it's a lot.
still doing doula shifts and homeschooling. That, I just really want to acknowledge
Yeah.
that. That's absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other. rabbit hole. But I think to have the energy and the space to continue to show up, I think it's a little bit of strategy, of being clear in like what you're there to talk about and how you're going to share it, and like being clear on like my colors and stuff like that is helpful. As far as like the process of creating content, but as far as the manifestations go, I think that um, having intention behind what I'm doing, and remembering that like each post that I create gets me closer to what it is that I'm trying to put out into the world. Whether that's something specific like a dollar amount, or it's like something bigger like a impact. Um, and just I think for me the biggest thing is just remembering that it's bigger than just an Instagram post. And I know that like not everybody is that deep. And for some people, they're like, no, it actually is just an Instagram post. But that's not true for me. Because people, and they read your content and they have an experience with it. Like you're impacting someone's day. And that's to me a pretty big deal. So
I agree. I love that. I think, there's been a few pieces of content over the past couple of months from both Instagram, TikTok, and Threads that I have either read or rewatched several times, saved, because I'm like, this is just so powerful. This is so
mm,
impactful. And this is a great reminder to myself as well, is like, it is an experience. I absolutely love. You should write a post about this. Content is an experience. I think that's such a
yeah.
beautiful thing to remind people and creators, not just business owners, as in coaches like us, but the content creators, influencers as well. Like your content is an experience, and when you tap in, do you have a ritual or way when you write content, when you create content? Is there ways that you ground yourself? Is there ways, where do you get your inspiration? Where do you get the things that you stand for and share with the world?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think this is something that builds over time. And as you're talking about the like experience of your content, there's also the experience of creating content and being like mindful and like self-aware during that process. Like, are your self-talk, like if you're making graphics and you're like, oh, I don't like the way this looks, or like, oh, this sounds terrible. And the whole time you're creating, you're like stressed out, staring at the computer screen, like, whoa, that's like we are humans and we need to be mindful of how we're feeling when we are doing this, or else we are going to burn out. And what comes out on the other side is not super awesome, because your energy is felt through the content, whether that's in like the words that you use, or energetically speaking, like literally the energy that gets put into it. And so that's not to say, don't become a perfectionist and be like, oh, I have to feel at my best when I create content, because we're humans and we're not always going to feel amazing. And sometimes we still have to show up and do the thing. And, I think that's important too. But for me, I have used human design to learn this a lot for myself. And I have taken a bit more of an intuitive approach with my content. Um, so for me, I have a document. It's literally like, I think it's like either 18 or 28 pages long. It's absolutely insane. And Google Docs of like ideas, or just like things I've been
Nice.
inspired by. And like, they're like little post starters for me. And so when I go to create content, I'm like, oh, I have this like almost like a seed, to work with, to like grow a piece of content from. And so that's really helpful for me.
What
I
are you in
do
human
sometimes
design? Sorry, Emily, what are you
I'm a
in human?
gen I'm a generator.
Oh, nice. I'm a manifester.
Oh, nice. That's so cool. I'm like so impressed by manifestors, because you guys just like get shit done. I
Sprint,
love
yeah, but we
that.
sprint and then we need to like sleep for a week. That's the thing with manifestors.
Right.
We do a million things
Yeah.
in a week that people do in 3 months, and then it's like, leave me alone. I need to sleep.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so like, I don't know, learning your human design I think is so helpful, because you can use that to your strength. Like maybe as a manifester for you, that means like making a bunch of content at once, and then like
Mm,
scheduling it out, and then you can have those weeks where you rest.
that's
Like
literally what
whatever
I
that
do.
looks like.
I will
Yeah,
bulk create. I'll
so
get in the
yeah.
mode. I will film. I can film up to like 50 short form videos in like one sitting in a couple of hours. And then honestly, I like even
That's
impress
incredible.
myself. And then I'll get to the phase where I'm tired. I'm in my luteal phase as well. And I'm like, thank
Mhm.
God that I have so much batch created content. And I've, until I learned not only myself as a manifester, but also cycle syncing, I think that's important as a
Yeah.
female. I really didn't realize, why do I have these bursts of energy and I feel so good and I feel on top of the world, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, I can't push through. And you probably have experience, I think every business owner where it's like, I really want to show up, I really, but you literally cannot.
You
And so
can't.
learning that, that's exactly what I do. I will like bulk create, and I've learned that's okay. You can have a week off where you're chill or whenever that comes. But I love what you said. I just really want to acknowledge what you said about the document. I have the exact same on Google Docs. I actually need to check how
Nice.
long mine is. I started this a few years ago. It's the best thing. I always say this to
Yeah.
any woman that comes and works with me for business. I'm like, it seems so simple, but it's one of the best strategies, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, and there's a Google Docs app, so I'm, like, driving
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can, like, do it, and then I found out that Google Docs, if you go to, like, the tools section in the top left corner, there's this on my computer at least, there's, like, a microphone, and you can talk
I do
and it
that.
types, and I'm like, "Oh my god," like, that was life-changing for me. I learned my, like, Mercury gate for human design and, like, I have yeah, so it's, like, a whole thing. So, something else I like doing before, especially before, like, filming content, um, I like to do some embodiment
Mm,
exercises, so, like, dancing, singing, like, just something that gets me, like, feeling, like, more energy flowing through my body, so that way
mm.
when I show up on my camera, my presence is there. I'm not, like, over there and who knows where else. I'm like, "Let me gather myself and really embody me," and then when I show up, it's like people are it's more magnetic, and I'm
Yeah.
more expressed, and like I'm really giving myself to that in the moment. Um, so I think that is super helpful. And something else I love telling my friends who or my clients who friends, clients, same thing.
Yeah, I
Who are
agree.
if they struggle to like have confidence on camera or remember what to say, like that experience where you put up the camera and you're like, wait, I forgot literally everything.
Yeah.
So CapCut, the app CapCut has a teleprompter in it, and you can type
Does it?
in, yeah, I have a post about it on my page. Yeah,
Oh,
like a how to
incredible.
find it. Yeah, it's amazing. So you can go in there and like type whatever you're gonna say, and then it like scrolls it on the screen so you can see it. But like obviously when the video's done, it's just you. Um,
Wow, that's a
yeah.
really, really good feature. I will be sharing that with my clients as well. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a handy thing because it's true. Sometimes I experience it, but I think a lot of my clients, especially new business owners who are starting to show their face more and speak, they have the exact same thing. Like I put up the camera and then I just forget. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. And of course, that's very stagnant energy, and it can like kind of
Mhm.
keep your creativity stuck, and you don't feel like you're in flow. But I love what you said about the embodiment. I do the exact same. Even before this podcast
Nice.
episode, every podcast episode interview, and even if I'm doing a solo recording, I'll shake out my body first, maybe do a bit of a dance party depending on the time of the day. But then I'll put in either some frequencies or some high vibe music, and I just for 5 to 10 minutes, I just sit and I ground myself. And I think that is,
Mhm.
again, these tips, what I really want to reiterate, I think they're powerful tips, but to everyone listening that are like, these are simple and yeah, because I know how it can be with a podcast episode. It's like, these are actually the things that help and they compound over a big amount
Yeah.
of time. This is the 1% of messy inspired action that you can take that can really help. And I think that we forget, and I love that we're really tapping into our bodily experience when it comes to showing up for our marketing and
Mhm.
showing up for our business, but allowing ourselves to create flow in our body. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree big time. I think for me, like I think some people are more body oriented than others. I grew up as a dancer. I love to
Mm,
dance. Like EDM music festivals are
mm,
like my happy place. Like that's me. And so it's a huge part of my life and how I stay regulated. I'm also like would consider
yes.
myself to be a highly sensitive person and like an empath, right? Like I have ADHD. And so I'm like, it's a huge part of me staying grounded and like keeping things flowing. Um, and I think, like what you were saying about getting behind the camera is an especially difficult spot because you're seeing yourself and you might have self judgments
Mm,
and the perfectionist and like, what are they going to think? And it's just vulnerable, like, to be
yeah.
honest, like you're sharing your perspectives. Like, that's a really brave thing to do to go on the internet and like believe that what you have to say is like worth sharing. So I just want to like give like to anyone who's listening like
Mm,
validation and like space for that. Like this is a hard thing to do, and I think we get into business and think, oh well, everyone else is doing it. I should
yeah.
just be able to show up on Instagram and take the
Mm,
do the live video, and then you do that. You try to do it and you freeze up, and you're like, whoa, it's not working. And I think that that's relatively normal, and it takes time to practice talking and practice your messaging and all of the things until you feel and work through, there's mindset blocks and energetic blocks that come up. The whole thing. I think marketing is not something to just be played down like a task. It's like it's a whole experience, I think.
yes, I love that. Not to be played down as a task because I think a lot of people see it as a task and see it as this
Hmm.
thing to tick off their to-do list. I've definitely had that mindset when I first started my business. So I resonate with that. But to instead, I love that perspective shift into how is this actually an experience for me, my business, for the people consuming my content, and not to play it down. And the vulnerability place, it's such a big thing to show up. I think you're right
Hmm.
to acknowledge everyone, practicing and starting. And even if you've been like, I've been creating content for the past like 7 years, and there's even still times where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious, or I'm feeling like, I'm naturally an extrovert, but sometimes I'm like, I'm feeling introverted today. Like I'm not feeling too
Yeah.
good. And even when I say that to my clients or people, they're like, wow, but you've been doing it for so long. And I'm like, but we're still human. It's still on the other side of the
Hmm.
screen. Regardless of which way it goes, there's still always judgment. There's always someone that's going to perceive you differently than how you want to make an impact. And so for the people listening, and they're maybe a bit scared. They're scared of that judgment. They're scared of the failure. They really want to start showing up. What are the things that maybe you have embodied, or how have you kind of pushed through that resistance of feeling all of that and feeling the vulnerability?
Yeah. If someone is experiencing that, I would love to remind them to that they have the power to choose who their people are, and your people are not people who aren't going to like your content, because that just doesn't even make sense. Like
Mm,
the, the person who's like going to come into your world and like should be there and wants to stay there and follow you and engage with you is the person who's going to value what you have to share, not the person who's going to think that it's dumb or you know extra or like whatever like the narrative is in your head. Like they're actually just not your people, and by releasing them and just creating a better space for the people that you do align with is actually going to create more abundance. And I know that it doesn't always feel that way, because that might mean less numbers or like lower numbers, less people.
yeah.
But if the quality is higher, then there's that's ultimately like what's best. um, and as far for me, I mean that has, I mean that's been a huge challenge for me, like to be able to sit here and like talk on a podcast about manifesting and like all these different things. I grew up like in a city that was very like hoity-toity. Everyone's like does everything the same way, and like it's all very typical and standard, and like no one really talks about how they're feeling. um and I hated that. I was like, I like couldn't, I didn't always feel like I could express myself a whole lot. I definitely pushed a lot of myself down. um and so it's been a process over years. Like you said, you've been doing it for like 7 years. I think mine would be mine's like 5 when I started my first business and, showed up on Instagram for the first time in that way. Um, so yeah, it takes time to like condition your mind and your body to be regulated in that space. But definitely taking the like tips, like the small tips that you hear. I know it sounds silly to like dance before you get on an Instagram live, but like just try it and
Yeah.
see if it makes a difference. And because it's those small changes that can make a big difference in the long run. Um, yeah, and if I think that if at any point in time you're feeling disconnected from what you're sharing and it doesn't feel genuine, like don't be afraid to take a step back and, take a break or just take a break from posting about your offers and just post about what you're inspired by or do some storytelling. Like there's a million different ways this can look, and there's so much content about what's the right way to do things and marketing and do this, but don't do that. And this is actually the right way, and this is what's trending. And like, it'll
Mm.
drive you crazy if you listen to it all. Um, Sometimes you gotta just like go inside and be like, what do you want to share today? Like, what's on your heart to share? What are you inspired by? And just try it out, see where it gets you and see the difference in how it feels, I think.
Yeah, I think asking the question, I've been asking this over the past year, like what actually inspires me? What do I actually want to share? Because I think it's really
Mm,
easy in the online space to be caught up in the trends and what's working for other people and to see, yeah, all the trending stuff. And it can really put a dampen on your own creativity and your own voice. And I think that's a very important question to ask yourself is what actually inspires me? What do I actually want to share? But yes, it takes the consistency. It takes time. I know a lot of people probably going to hate hearing the consistency piece, but it's so, so
yeah.
true. Even what you said something about, going live for the first time and feeling that freeze. I will never, ever forget the first time I went live. It was probably about 7 years ago now. And it was the most terrifying thing. I think number one, it took me about an hour to work up to actually press the live. And lives back then, I'm not sure if you remember, but Instagram lives back then, they would save for 24 hours on your story. So when people would watch your
Yes.
story, it was like that. So it didn't just go on your news feed or you could just delete it or whatever. They actually saved onto your story. And so I'm thinking, holy shit, like everyone is going to watch this live when they see my story. And it was one of the most terrifying things that I ever
Yeah.
did. But this is a reminder to everyone you got to start somewhere. Now, I almost prefer
Mhm.
going live because I talk so much. And I'm like, it's so
Same.
much easier. Yeah, it's so much easier than an Instagram story because I have to stop inside, I have to put captions on. But now I'm like,
Yeah.
give me a live, give me a podcast. It's so much easier for me.
Mhm.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because you start somewhere, you have to really just try it. But I could have done it a few times and hated doing it. But I actually love going live now. So I love that is like the consistency piece and seeing what inspires you, seeing what works. I think we consume too much and think it's working for this coach, working for this person. Maybe it's my thing. It's like you actually just have to try different things and you have to
Mhm.
try them a few times. I think that
Mhm.
because of the society we live in, everything's like these quick dopamine hits. We want these quick wins. And I truly believe is you need to try something a few times, especially when it comes to your marketing, especially when it comes to showing up on social media to say, like, do I actually like this? Is this good for my business? Does this serve me? Does this make the impact that I want to make?
Yeah, I love that. And what that brought up for me is like remembering that we are humans with nervous systems. And so whenever you get on an Instagram live and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die, everyone's going to hate me, like whatever it is like that you're feeling, like that is a very real
Yeah.
experience because your body and your brain, this is a new thing. And your brain and your body are trained to be very afraid when something's new to keep you alive. And so that's a natural like response. And I think normalizing that and remembering like, okay, my body and my brain are doing this because they want to protect me. Like, hey, thanks body, thanks brain, but this is actually something that I want to do because I have XYZ goal. and or I want to try something new, and like taking some deep breaths. Like there's lots of different tools you can use to regulate in moments like that. Um, whether it's moving or EFT,
Mm.
tapping or like meditating, whatever works for you. Yeah, I think it can be helpful to like notice that and then take a minute to bring yourself down a bit and regulate yourself and then go ahead and go forward with what you're trying to do. Because just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it's not aligned. It might actually just mean that you need to act like a muscle,
Mm.
and it just needs to be worked out a little bit more. Um, yeah.
Great takeaway. We're human beings with nervous systems, and to remember that when we're showing up online, when we're doing our marketing, because yeah, I think we forget our nervous system is quite literally built to protect us from a threat, and going live can seem like a threat to your nervous system, so it's going to do whatever it
Yes.
does. So I think we forget this, though.
Yeah.
I think it's become so normalized, which is great to so many degrees, but I think it's become so normalized to see everyone else and be like, they're showing up, they're creating this, they're on their story talking, do it, and then wonder what's wrong with me. Why am I so afraid? Or why do I
Hmm.
freeze up every single time I'm putting the camera up on my tripod? But yes, I love that, Emily. Like that was an incredible reminder. You have a nervous system. It is made to protect you, and
Hmm.
that is one scary thing. I've loved all of the takeaways that you've brought to this. I think this is such a great perspective when it comes to marketing, when it comes to showing up with content and for your business and the impact. And I always kind of end the podcast episode with a random question. And I was just looking at I have like a
Oh,
few that I choose from. And I was looking
okay.
at it and I was like, which one do I want to choose for Emily? And I think
Oh,
that I am going to, okay, looking back on your journey, what's one unexpected lesson you've learned that you wish you knew when you started?
oh my gosh. Um, I'm gonna like look back on my whole business
Mm,
journey from when I started my first doula business because it all kind of like
mm,
runs together. Um, okay, I have two. One's more like feminine, one's more masculine.
do them both. We love it.
So yeah, okay. So on the feminine side, I would say keep doing you, boo. Like I started my first Instagram for my doula business and I would share like all kinds of stuff really, even if it wasn't related to my doula services. And it was my account was growing and I was getting engagement and I was getting clients, but I started talking down to myself about it because I thought like, oh well, this isn't like strategic enough, or I'm not sharing the like 5 tips for breastfeeding. Because I didn't feel always like called to share stuff like that. That's not the kind of content that I enjoyed creating. Um, and so I like instead of choosing to lean into my own voice and accept like my own style, I like quit and I stopped showing up on Instagram. And that makes me sad. So like if I could go back, I trust the whole journey and everything. I had other things going on in my life too. It wasn't just that, but I think if I could go back to that moment, I would say like keep going. And that's what I've learned is to ultimately more of me in my business is always a good idea. That's
Mm,
like never going to be a bad thing.
yes.
um, yeah, it might mean slower growth. It might mean that things are going to go differently from like how I thought they were going to, but ultimately it's like what's best. Um, Yeah, and then on the masculine side, I would say I just got diagnosed with ADHD like a little bit over a year ago. So I would say even if something feels like really hard, like to keep going, that when it comes to like tasks, I get really overwhelmed by like
Yeah.
sometimes even the smallest of tasks with my marketing.
Mm,
Um, because they were new, and when you have ADHD, learning something new is like really hard and frustrating and uncomfortable. And so I would say lean into that more, um, and that, I'm a quick learner. And I would just remind myself that it won't be that way forever. And I think I probably would have made a little bit more progression like quicker um, if I would have remembered that. So those are two like takeaways I've had over the years that I now apply that I'm like most grateful for.
I love that you brought a feminine and masculine component. I feel like I need to add that to the question. And whenever I ask that question to
Ooh,
someone, I need to be like, give me a feminine and give me a masculine. This is inspired by another
love it.
guest. I love that. That was incredible. And I love those takeaways as well. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that you brought to this episode. It was incredible. Where can everyone find you? How can they work with you? How can they slide into your DMs? Where are you at?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Oh my gosh. So I am on Instagram mainly at the.helpers.hub. As far as working with me goes, I offer done for you services.
Mm.
So I like to work with people in like a collaborative approach. So for example, I work with a website designer and I do the copywriting for her carousels and she is a designer, so she designs them and posts them.
Nice.
So I love doing collaborative work like that
Mm.
because it's a lot for me to do all of the things, it's a lot for you to do all of the things, so let's just like share the load.
Mm.
So that's what I like to do. I love, and again, as we said earlier, I love working with world changers, people who have a big mission. So if you have certain parts of your social media that you don't enjoy doing, then hit me up. And I do have some other offers coming later this year that are going to include like a space to grow in your marketing skills, in your content creation skills, and practice the identity piece that comes with that, more of a done with you kind of style. So that's coming later. And if you are interested in that or interested in like anything we talked about today, Instagram is the best place to come hang out with me. I share lots of perspectives similar to the
Mm.
ones we talked about today. I do Instagram lives and go into these kinds of things deeper, content strategy tips, content creation tips, and perspective shifts. So I would love to connect with people on there.
Incredible. Thank you. And I would definitely leave those details in the show notes below. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.